Hey, you biochemistry students, in this video we're going to take a look at the 4 stages of digestion, and it's going to be combining some of those molecules of energy, biomolecules of energy that we've looked at so far. So it's going to start pulling all of these things together. So to start out with, when you eat something, you put it into your mouth, and your body's going to try to get energy out of that. And so once it gets into your mouth, it needs to be broken down into pieces small enough that it can be absorbed into the body. So the first stage of digestion is going to start out with ingested food. So ingested food. That ingested food is then going to be pulled into the mouth, and saliva and enzymes in your mouth will start breaking those things down. And then it also goes into your stomach, and in your stomach kind of mechanically breaks things down a little bit as well. And then there's also enzymes in your stomach as well as hydrochloric acid. And so all of those are going to be trying to take big molecules and break them down into smaller pieces. So now your ingested food here is going to get broken down into fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And these are too big to be absorbed in your small intestine. So in your mouth and in your stomach, we're going to break these things down. And so all of these will get broken down into smaller things. And our fats will get broken down into fatty acids. And into glycerol. And we saw both of these in the unit on lipids. Our carbohydrates are going to get broken down into glucose and other simple sugars. So, and other sugars. And then our proteins will get broken down into amino acids. Amino acids. Okay, and we took a look at amino acids in the unit on proteins, and we took a look at glucose and other sugars in carbohydrates. It's almost like all of this stuff is coming together somehow. Crazy. All right, now these molecules are small enough to be absorbed in the small intestine. So up here is the first stage. It's going to be in our mouth and in our stomach. And then the second stage here is where these small molecules are going to be absorbed into the small intestine. And then what's going to happen with them is they're going to be worked on inside of the tissues, inside of the cells, primarily in mitochondria. And so I'm just going to make like a big line right here. And so like big line like this. All of these molecules are going to be worked on. So they all get into the body. Okay, all of these get into the body. And they are going to be worked on or converted into acetyl groups. So converted into acetyl groups. And if you remember from previous video, acetyl groups are a carbon double bond oxygen like this, and then coming off like that. Now, this would be an OH if it was acetic acid, but without that OH there, we just call it an acetyl group. And so this is stage 2 of digestion, we're going to be converting these molecules into acetyl groups, and those acetyl groups will be picked up by coenzyme A, and coenzyme A then becomes acetyl coenzyme A. So in stage 3, these acetyl groups here are part of coenzyme A. So they're acetyl CoA, acetyl CoA, and acetyl CoA then becomes oxidized, and this then it goes into what we call our citric acid cycle, and this is, well, it's a series of biochemical pathways, okay, that goes like this. It goes counterclockwise, typically as we draw it. And the acetyl-CoA is going to bring in these acetyl groups, these 2 carbon groups, into what we call the citric acid cycle. I'm just going to label this here, citric acid cycle. Citric acid cycle, and in this, our acetyl groups like this are going to get broken down, and as they get broken down, they're going to release carbon dioxide, and as they release that carbon dioxide, they're also going to be releasing energy, and this carbon dioxide ends up getting exhaled. This is where the carbon dioxide that we breathe out comes from. And in the process of doing this, it's going to provide the energy for making things like over here, our NADH and our FADH2. Okay, so it's going to provide the energy for this. Now this citric acid cycle, we're going to take a look at it a little bit more closely coming up. Okay, but then this is stage 3. And then in stage 4, what's going to happen is in stage 4, we're going to use this NADH and this FADH2 here to make ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which will be the energy currency used in the body. All right, now the stages themselves aren't that terribly important, but what I wanted to point out to you is that we're combining all of these things that we've learned about through biochemistry, which I think is kind of cool. We're going to have to break them down into smaller pieces, and then those smaller pieces get converted primarily into these acetyl groups. So it doesn't matter if you start out with a fat or carbohydrate or protein, they all get converted primarily into these acetyl groups. The acetyl groups go into the citric acid cycle. In the citric acid cycle, we're going to be producing carbon dioxide. We're going to break these into carbon dioxide, and in that process, we take that energy, convert that energy into NADH and FADH2, which then provides the fuel or the energy for making ATP. All right, lots of stuff there. The next thing we're going to take a look at will be the citric acid cycle.